Hello and welcome to my review of Cable #1, an issue that's written by Jerry Dugan with art by Phil Noto. And if you aren't a Kid Cable fan or don't know much about him, I don't know that this issue is going to change your mind or introduce you to the character. Jerry Dugan really just goes and hits the ground running and does more to introduce Pixie and Armor more than Cable, which is odd. I don't know how other people would. I have read, say, Extermination and the pre-Hickman X-Force book, which pretty much spells out Cable and everything he's about. But if you don't know, Kid Cable did come back to our current timeline to fix the problem of the original X-Men being in the current timeline, something that he said his older self did not do the job and ended up killing his older self to take his place here. Now, you end up having an issue that I think has a bit of a focus problem. You end up having a couple different things going on that aren't necessarily things I would think Kid Cable would be involved with, or at least if you think, hey, I want to read a Cable book, it's stuff that you wouldn't really think of, especially because there's not a real introduction to the character. But we do start out here with a pretty cool concept of the Quarry, where you have Cable and Wolverine fighting out in a Bloodsport type challenge match here, where they end up having this league. And it is just like Bloodsport, except not as cool because Jean-Claude Van Damme is not involved. And I hope that somehow Krakoa would realize that Jean-Claude is a mutant, an awesome mutant, lets him on the island, and then we can have a Frank Dukes type fight going on with him. But for now, we'll have to deal with Cable and Wolverine. I think that Wolverine fans might be a little upset at all of this because he is kind of neutered or nerfed here as he fights Kid Cable. But again, the name on the book is Cable, so you want to set up Cable being kind of a badass, and him beating Wolverine does the job. And you even get to see his telekinesis powers there. And it's nice. You end up having Cable and Wolverine have dialogue together. The thing, though, is that Wolverine gets beat, and I think people might have problems with that. But yeah, you end up having this Quarry and this Bloodsport going on, and I really would like to see more of this. And starting out the book, it does a good job of some excitement, some things. You end up having a bunch of characters mentioned or seen, and this is probably my favorite part of the issue, though I'm not a fan of Phil Noto's art, and that kind of gets me throughout this whole issue. It really ends up making this issue less enjoyable, and as you go on, though, there is Wolverine mad, just like all Wolverine fans probably are after reading that, and a funny little thing with Silver Samurai, who basically is just the let's get ready to rumble guy. I'm glad that at least he's not one of the people who go with the signs for the round. I mean, that would be real humiliating for him. But you go on and you see what's pretty cool here is the official record of combat in the Quarry, where you end up seeing some pretty cool fights. It was mentioned that Magic had cheated, of course, cheated in the very first fight. I mean, didn't waste any time there. But you have Esme Cuckoo beat Irma Cuckoo. You know, it finally solves that internet debate that's been raging for years. But one of the best ones, I think, is the Dazzler and Jubilee fight. That's pretty good. Dazzler ended up winning there. But then we go on, and the story here then shifts to Cable helping this young mutant Curse find his friend, and his friend is named Fauna, and we then go to it. And I will admit that once we get to this part, I actually do start liking Phil Noto's art a little more. And one of the things with Phil Noto's art that I don't like is the backgrounds tend to be a little wonky, but if you're in a jungle vegetation type deal, it works out. And it's also like a watercolored style that I never am a fan of. So that might be something that's just personal with just me. But you end up seeing Fauna walking through, and the whole spell out was by the young Curse said Fauna ended up going past the limits of where they were supposed to go, because it says that a couple days ago, Krakoa ate another island, pretty much a monster island, and this big giant lion type giant monster thing ended up being there. And you have just, again, there's a weird focus here, because the whole idea of this is that this lion monster is upset. It ends up being almost the story of the lion with the splinter and the mouse and all that sort of thing, because Fauna keeps saying, oh, it's upset, it's hurt. Well, you end up then showing, Jerry Dugan shows the power set of Pixie, who goes then to calm down Fauna by giving pixie dust, where then Fauna ends up seeing this giant monster as almost like a teddy bear, where the wild things are type monster. It doesn't serve very well, because then there's some things that you should be afraid of. There really is. But then Pixie tries to use the same thing on the monster, and it does not work. So you end up having Kid Cable say, hey, get this Fauna, take him out of here. We're going to try, me and Armor will try to do something with this monster. And it really is a setup to show you Armor's power set. You get the armor. I like Armor enough when the monster steps on her and Kid Cable, but they are protected. But when they're stepped on, they end up seeing that the monster does have a splinter. And so you go with this. And again, this is not exactly hard hitting. This isn't exactly that exciting. It's kind of an odd story. But what ends up happening is Cable ends up seeing the splinter thing. Okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to get the splinter out. When he does get it out, it ends up being a big sword where he ends up. And that's cool enough. Kind of looks like almost like a Final Fantasy VII Cloud sword a little. Not as big, but it's there. Then you get the weirdest thing, because the sword ends up interacting with Kid Cable. Afterwards, he ends up telling his dad, Scott, that it interacted with his metal arm, but it's hard to see anything like that with this art by Phil Noto. But what then happens, and this is where things get wacky, it ends up transporting him a psychic remembrance back to the original bearer of the sword, very much Rom's Space Knight, but named Morn. And you end up finding out some things about this. And I just wanted to know what book I bought at this point. But you end up, when he comes back to, he's very excited, and he says he always wanted a big effing sword. And it's a kind of a cool thing that they spell out that he is a guy who wants to have his own identity, not like his older self, and to be a sword-wielding guy instead of a gun-shooting guy. That kind of does it. And it's not that bad a moment there. That at least serves to go forward with Cable as his own little character. But from there, we then go across the galaxy to where you end up having a museum of these old Space Knights. And again, this is where I'm like, where's Cable go? And these Space Knights are activated because of the sword. End up like, I am activated. The sword has been found. Oh my. And so then you just end up with more of a Space Knight deal where they blast out. They're in a museum. It's almost like a Comic-Con. It's a con of old robots and things like that. And they end up activating and flying out. And I'm telling you, this is the craziest thing, where you get the last quarter of the issue about Space Knights. And then when they do get out, you then end up in a place far away, a different place and a different time and things like that. And you end up getting, this is the page right before the cliffhanger, but you end up getting a pretty cool character coming back. It seems like it might be the Wasteland, the old man Wasteland, but I don't know. And at this point, the art gets so wonky that I just ended up, okay, it's cool, but it would have been a lot better if the art was a little bit better. But overall, I just think that this first issue didn't serve a great purpose to focus on Kid Cable. You end up having a bunch of things thrown at you. It's almost like the kitchen sink philosophy here, almost as if Jerry Dugan coming into this was not confident enough that the Kid Cable stuff would be enough for people to get excited and want to buy this book. And I think the opposite effect happened with me. I wanted more of Cable. I wanted to see how he was dealing. You get a little bit with his dad, Cyclops, but I wanted to see more of how he's dealing with Krakoa, how he's going. And it did get tiresome in the Extermination deal and also the pre-Hickman X-Force book of the idea of everybody, man, you're a villain, you killed Cable. And then him keeps saying, no, I am Cable, I had to do this. but I would have liked a little bit of that. I would have liked to have seen a little more. He's there with Pixie and Armor, which is fine. I would have liked to have seen more of his relationship with the other mutants, the other things in Krakoa, things like that. We just didn't get that, and I can't tell you that I think that the focus would get to that eventually because of the odd things that are going on here. But overall, because of that, I'm going to give this book I'm going to actually give it a 5.5. I did not like the art. If you like that art style, I think your score will go up a little bit higher than that. But it's one of these books that if I'm just checking out number ones to see if I'm going to go forward with it, I probably would not go forward with this. But that's the case. And thank you for watching the video. And if you like this video, it'd be great if you'd subscribe to the channel. Also, in the description of the video, there's links to a lot of different things, including our DC and Marvel podcasts, websites, things like that. So if you want to check that out, that would be great. But thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you later.